If an anime wants you to get interested in its story, it has to get you invested in its characters. Getting an entire cast right is a difficult task that involves balancing screen time, building character dynamics, and forging believable relationships. The shows in this category reach across the spectrum in terms of personality, substance, and size. From small, focused casts to entire crews and behemoths, these characters are the most direct connection we have to the story. Your nominees for Best Cast of 2023 are
現地隊員から出動要請が来ました。
別に。
あ！可愛いね。めっちゃ照れる。
は？死ね。
なんだあいつ。私には可愛いなんて勧誘の時しか言わなかったくせに。
さつきさん。よかった会えて。
ゆずちゃん、まこちゃん。おいしそう。焼けたね。まこちゃん、逆に白くなった。
俺さ、遊んでやるから貸してみろ。ほら逃げない。
ボール取られちゃったのだ。
ほら
姫の部屋の前も陣取られるとは。
ありがとな。じゃあ俺が干し方教えてあげる。
別に。
いいだろうして持ってた。いやちょっとみんなさ。
おっしゃー！なあトルビー、ついにやったな。
やったー！
Your jury winner is Skip and Loafer. Your public winner is Jujutsu Kaisen.
Now, I can't say that these results are all too predictable. Would you agree with that, OniMaru?
Yeah, I kind of expected it.
And, for good reason, right? I mean, Skip and Loafer is an amazing show, and part of the reason why it's amazing in the first place is because of its cast.
Yeah, that's like, when I think of Skip and Loafer, that's the first thing that comes to my mind, because it's so focused on that part. It's about the characters primarily.
And what do you think about the characters of Skip and Loafer makes them particularly great for the jury?
The thing with Skip and Loafer is that I think they all bounce off really well off the main character in different ways, whether they're contrasting from her, mirroring her, and then she's also able to kind of bring out the best in them. But I think it's really the whole vibe that they all kind of create together, where they're very different characters from very different backgrounds, and yet they're all trying to be learning to be like supportive of each other and authentic with each other.
I never thought about that. So it really is kind of coming from the perspective of Mitsumi, where she's kind of this like fish out of water country bumpkin in the city for the first time, and the people that she meets is kind of reflective of her experience.
Yeah, and normally, like, I don't know, in what you'd expect is like people to either be put off by her or to make fun of her, but instead the different personalities are actually able to jive together and they're attracted to her. Like they gravitate instead of, pushing each other away.
Storm, what are some of the things that the jury talked about when talking about Skip and Loafer?
So OniMaru has covered a lot of it, I must say, is that the interpersonal dynamics in Skip and Loafer, they pull you in. All of its cast members going through things in their own lives, whether it be Mitsumi trying to forward her goals of becoming a public servant of all things, which is really admirable, especially for her remote community. And then there's Shima's personal life, which is a characterization and a presentation of something which you don't see a lot of, is someone going through and working with their childhood traumas. And among that, these two, among all of the other excellent examples in the cast, they present a really gentle aspect of exploring the things which are going on in these high schoolers' lives.
I feel like when you're dealing with, a group of high schoolers, it can be really easy to tread into melodramatic waters. I mean, obviously that's like a lot of what high school anime is like. How do you guys think Skip and Loafer dealt with the drama that comes up between the characters?
I feel like Skip and Loafer deals with it in a more grounded way, and it kind of nips a lot of the misunderstandings in the bud by just like having the characters sort of try to see the other's perspective more openly, or at least try to be more embracing of each other's differences.
So it can be easy to have a tendency to do this whole like, oh my god, I like him, but she seems to like her more than me, and which is like a genuine subplot in the show, but it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, so in handling drama, the show very astutely cements the fact that every one of these characters has got their own flaws and their own positive characteristics. And starting from that point allows you to really sympathize with anything that they go through. So the character that you're mentioning, of course, is with Mika and her selfishness in relation to wanting or desiring a relationship with Shima. But that is really nicely contrasted by Mitsumi's overall welcoming perspective, in that she has no illusions that Mika is a character who will be out to cause her any harm, because she is generally well mannered. And the contrast between Mitsumi's character, who is at some points clueless, and Mika's very focused and determined character, it really lessens the harshness that some of the feelings which Mika might evoke in her jealousy. And similarly, in other character relationships, I think of the relationship between Murashige and Makoto subverts the typical expectation of a popular girl interacting with a less popular girl by firstly bringing Makoto into Mitsumi's circle because she's just a friendly character, and then from that point establishing the fact that Murashige, despite being popular because of her beauty, wants to be someone who is more than her beauty. Wants to be someone who relates to people as they are, and that genuine desire for connection to Makoto is another example of how the show really establishes a sympathetic perspective for each of the characters.
Now, the thing I've noticed about our two winners here is that Skip and Loafer, compared to Jujutsu Kaisen, is a kind of a more self-contained story, right? So it's one girl's life, it's a school, it's a little sub compartment of Tokyo. And Jujutsu Kaisen and some of these other shows, like the 100 Girlfriends Who Really Love You, which is 100 girlfriends, it's really drastically different in the amount of people that they're trying to showcase, and thus it changes the kind of calculation on what people you can focus on, what sort of importance and significance that you can show. How do you think that Jujutsu Kaisen handled its large cast, Onimaru?
I think Jujutsu Kaisen did an interesting job because what we're dealing with in season 2 as a whole is like the scopes and stakes are like, I mean, the stakes were always large, but like here it's very different. As I mean, I don't know. Are we also including the flashback arc?
Part of the season, right?
Yeah. So like pretty much between like it sets up the characters in the flashback arc, and it gives you like really interesting background on them, which really helps kind of reinforce what's going on during the season. Sorry, the next arc, which is the Shibuya incident. And I think the way it handles its cast is very interesting because everybody sort of is scattered in Shibuya, like doing their own thing and kind of coming across different dangers, but they're all like trying to survive and also having their own goals. So it's like they're not as much interacting with each other as much as you're following kind of each of the things that's kind of happening at the same time as they're all like worried about each other and everybody coming out of it alive.
Oh, interesting point. I didn't consider that. So, while Skip and Loafer is more about their interpersonal interactions, Jujutsu Kaisen is more the fact that everyone is sort of, not exactly knowing what's going on and having to deal with their own thing individually. But there's like a lot of them.
Yeah, and I think it also speaks to the strength of Gojo as a character and his presence as part of the cast, because once he's removed from the picture, everything kind of goes into chaos. And so he's been built up as this like great pillar that now like that this can happen once he's removed. And both the flashback arc and then what happens in Shibuya kind of does a really good job of setting that up. Because he's like inherently tied with the theme. So like the cast is also like moving the themes forward.
Do you think that's why the public liked it so much? Or do you think the public just clicks on popular shows?
A little bit of both. I think it's like I think it's a little bit of it's hard because I feel like Jujutsu Kaisen like last season was just, especially because it was just last season, last 2 seasons, was so like top of mind and collectively taking over the internet, that it's hard to ignore. Like, and also because of, it's action and like so much going on and so many hype moments, that's also like why it's easier to kind of think of it and connect with it.
What was the jury's take on Jujutsu Kaisen, Storm?
One thing that OniMaru and yourself have brought up is the large sort of divergence between the character groupings and which we saw established in the first season. And a lot of the jury felt that in moving away from the close-knit teams which we got to know the characters in the first season, it really didn't work out as well, because when you put characters who spend a lot of time in the same place, they kind of make up for each other's shortcomings. But in this instance, the show is instead leaning towards more the action side of anime, where it's looking to explore character dynamics through their expression and self-expression of power and ability. And now, while it succeeds at that to some degree, there was a lot of shock moments in this season which we feel like didn't really support any character development.
I actually agree with that.
Yeah, so key things would be probably to do with Nobita's character, especially. It feels like it really undermined her value of sorts. Others would be the drastic shift from the focus of Suguru and Gojo in Hidden Inventory arc into the Shibuya arc, where instead of looking at the dynamic between friends in a similar situation, and as a bad situation comes down like we had in the first season, moving into Shibuya, where everyone is separated, all of the previous dynamics which have been established have been thrown out essentially, well, in favor of some which show up again, like Yuji and Megumi. There is very limited progress that I feel like Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 does on building those established character dynamics, which I think were an integral part of the success of the first season.
Now, OniMaru, on a more positive note, what do you look for in a good cast? Like, what do you consider a good cast, and do you see that reflected in any of these shows here specifically?
A lot of times when I think of a good cast, I kind of just gravitate, or I think of an ensemble cast, but I know that's not the case for like all of the shows, because every show like has a different intent and a different things it's going for. So a cast, is there, and it wouldn't work the same way, wouldn't have the same function. But me personally, like I always like having like a variety of personalities that can like either add fun or make it compelling to watch, or kind of like come together so well that even though everybody is like different and not similar, it'll either give you a different perspective or someone else will like add something, whether it's humor or banter or anything like that. That kind of makes the show feel alive while you're watching it. It makes you want to keep coming back to it. So
almost like everyone having a purpose of some sort.
yeah, like not anyone just kind of being there just to be there, which I feel like Skip and Loafer captures very well, because that's, its primary focus. It's on the characters. I feel like Oshinoko is also pretty good at that, because you have like all of these kind of characters in showbiz and in acting that, kind of literally are trying to capture that star power. So they have this charm to them and this larger than lifeness that they're like trying to capture. And even with 100 Girlfriends, whose like main purpose is more to entertain, And even though you're kind of having a juggling act of kind of all these different waifu tropes that are being introduced, it's interesting seeing them like being amped up to their extreme and how they bounce off of the main character who sort of like grounds them. So the effect is it's very entertaining to watch.
What really stood out to me too is Vinland Saga. Just because, first of all, Vinland Saga season 2 was like nothing like I expected. It's like mainly about farming, but I feel like a lot of the characters are basically just there to inform Thorfinn as a character, meaning they're all basically different foils, different paths he could have taken that he either accepts or rejects. So Torkel is this kind of brutish, kind of what if he continued along the same lines of killing thing. Canute is the kind of like son of destiny. Do you accept your fate kind of thing. So I just really liked how it played with all the different themes.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Vinland Saga definitely very effectively moved the themes forward with its characters in a powerful way. It's just when it actually made me think differently about cast, because when I think of cast, I think of more of that kind of like characters bouncing off of each other and like those fun interpersonal dynamics. But like Vinland Saga was very heavily rooted in Thorfinn and kind of his evolution, but all the other characters surrounding him did play a pivotal part in making that happen, especially Einar.
Now, Storm, is there anything on here that you think people need to be exposed to more of that really remarkably excels in something that you don't think people may not know?
I think for this season or for this year, there were some really exceptional shows when it comes to communicating ideas of what's happening internally in characters through production elements, which is honestly a treat. There are very few of these shows which come out every year. It is really a pleasure to be able to judge them alongside other shows in the Anime Awards each year. And so those in particular, well, we've selected one as a winner with Skip and Loafer, but the others which I would really like to point out in that regards, Surune Season 2, continuation from KyoAni of the first season, which is like at least 5 tiers above Season 1 in regards to execution in every regards. From the story to progression, from the character exploration, from the cinematic elements especially. It's a massive step up, and it is excellent at bridging a gap between you as the viewer connecting to the character on screen. Another instance would be Overtake, which is another great show. It's not quite as movie-like in its cinematography, but it is very clever in the way that it presents certain character elements by selecting particular elements of body motion or body language to focus on, or looking at the way that characters react in the presence of each other, choosing very carefully what to keep in frame at all times. And in doing so, Overtake manages to present a great picture of people who are trying to do their best and people who, well, there's a bit of trauma exploration in one of the main characters too. He's actually Koya Madoka, who's also nominated for Dramatic Character this year, where it explores a rooted traumatic event in his past, which he has to sort of overcome because it's a part of revealing who he is to himself, and in rediscovering himself and his passion for photography within a completely new context that he was unfamiliar with. It also brings out the best in the other cast members as well. And that's not to say the show is only about him, because it instead wants to follow, and does follow, an up-and-coming F4 driver in Haruka, and the way that he wants to follow in the steps of his dad and seeking for his first podium finish in this 4th-tier Formula Racing scene. It's by no means at the top of the game, but it's high stakes for him because it matters for him. The last show that I'd bring up is with Yuzuki Family's Four Sons. The key part of the show is it reveals a family dynamic is in a way which not a lot of shows can capture. If you have siblings, the show will talk to you because it explores the things that peeve you off about your siblings, the things that you hate, the reasons which bring you all together as a family. It's a really special experience, especially as it explores. Well, it's essentially following the fallout of what's happening to their family bubble after their parents pass away tragically.
Thank you for your illuminations. I mean, we could sit here and talk about cast all day, and the whole thing about this year is that these casts are so remarkably different and different in so many different ways that it really is a treat to just sit down and talk with you guys. But I think that's all the time we have. So I want to thank you all for coming. It's been a great while, and I hope you all have a good day.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.